Thanks very much, Stevie. Welcome along to tonight's Regional Development Project panel. Tonight we're in the lovely county of Louth, courtesy of the Louth Arts Office. It's great to be here, especially great to be in the home of the Leinster champions. So very big thanks to Moya Hodgers for organising this and for getting the timing so bang on as well. Tonight we're talking about publishing for the first hour. So we've three fine people here who know more about publishing and sync than I do. So I will be asking them to provide the kind of dummies guide and answer the questions as well. So they're the experts. In the second hour, we'll be joined by Moya. And basically, in the second hour, we'll be talking to her about what are the supports, both financial and non-financial, available from the Louth Arts Office for musicians and artists in the county. So we're talking about that. And that's also will be an opportunity for you to get your say about kind of like what you've kind of heard, what you've kind of like liked and not liked about this project. Also, it's a chance for you as well to kind of like ask her about other opportunities. One thing is very interesting to kind of note that we kind of we noted last night for the first time. I suppose it was something we'd noted before, but no one articulated. And one of the outcomes we're always looking for from this project is what do the musicians in Louth want from their local arts office? And we suddenly realised last night, after about 25 minutes, that actually what they were after was more panels. They were after kind of like more professional development panels like this. So that was kind of something that was a very interesting takeaway from last night's discussion. So I'd be very interested to kind of talk in the second hour to you to get the ideas of the Louth musicians about what they're after. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to ask each one of the three publishing people, starting with Jennifer, to say hello, tell us a little bit about themselves, tell us kind of like, where they're currently working and how they got to where they are today. So, microphone over to you, Jennifer.
Wow, that's actually a really long question. My name is Jennifer Reeve. I work for a company called Neophonic, and we are a group of music supervisors that work together as a company. So basically, if you hire one of us, you get all of us. We are individual and independent music supervisors, as well as the music department for HBO and Max. So sometimes I am the full-on music supervisor for a show. Sometimes I'm hiring a music supervisor for the show. Depends on what the client needs and what services they're going to require. And as far as how I got here, I started out in advertising way back in the 90s and got invited to somebody's recording session for 30 seconds of music for a Whirlpool spot. And up until that point, it was just like the best day of my life. So I had this epiphany of this is what I'm supposed to do. So I dropped everything, went back to school, got a master's degree in music for film, and then moved out to LA and was lucky enough to get an assistant position, schlepping coffee and answering phones until I worked my way up. So
Wow.
that's how I got here.
Wow. Okay. So what does your kind of like day to day involved in as a kind of like when you're looking for music? What's your day to day roles like?
Um, well, surprisingly, music supervision is a lot of admin as well as creative. So some days I may be listening to music all day, just trying to find something for a specific scene or a group of scenes, or just trying to, at the beginning of a show, when we start working on something, trying to find the sound of the show and just rifling through music and listening to stuff. But when you're doing the job on a day-to-day basis, it's finding a group of songs, pitching those songs, having a conversation with the creatives on the show of what are they going for, what's the unspoken thing we're trying to use the music for. Is it trying to explain something that's happening in the scene or just go along? And sometimes it's just about the sound, the beat that's in the background that's not score. And then figuring out all the legal rights that we might need in order to use that song. Is it public domain? Do we have to go record our own version? Are we licensing something? And then putting all of that together. So there's surprisingly a lot of admin that goes along with all the creative on a day-to-day basis. So,
Okay.
oh, go ahead.
Excellent stuff. That's great. That's really good. I really appreciate you joining us as well today. So that's great to have you on board. So thanks
Happy
for
to
being.
be here.
Next person, Juliet. Could you say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and where you got to where you are?
Okay, so I'm Juliet Martin and I run Silverstream Music, and we are music publishers. We represent mainly Irish-based composers, and we also provide music supervision mainly for TV and film. I sometimes do a little bit of work in ads, and I actually did a little bit of theatre work this year. It was the first time, but it's mainly in film and TV. And I started, yes, way back in the 90s also. I worked in an Irish independent label publisher and artist management company, kind of doing everything. And I was sort of on the other side of where the music supervisor is, in that I was licensing our music to production companies and seeing that there was no music, there wasn't really a music supervision service in Ireland. Rory, I think this is before you might have been around. And I was kind of maybe looking to get out of the labely side of things and just went and met publisher or production companies and just said, look, I can do your music supervision. I understand all the legal side of it. I know a lot of music and just kind of gradually built from there.
Okay. And like, along the way, obviously you've seen the industry change as well, and you've
Yeah,
seen kind of like the
hugely.
industry
Yeah.
develop. Do you think kind of like, there's a far more greater appreciation and awareness of what publishing is about now than it was when you were and Jennifer were starting out back in the
What do
1990s?
you mean in terms of music supervision? I mean, I think definitely. If that's the question, I think definitely what music can provide for a TV show has complete or has there's much greater awareness of what music can achieve in a television show. And, there's been an explosion of content, as we know, with the streamers. And I think there's so much content being made that music is a way to sort of maybe rise above other shows. But I mean, fundamentally, it's still just a storytelling aid. But it is a great way for uh, bands, artists to get some exposure, and it's a way to make money from their art. So it's great that more tracks are being, more productions are being made, and it's great that more music's been included in them. And I've seen fees go right up for syncs.
Okay, excellent stuff. Well, listen, thank you very much, Judith, for joining us tonight. Great to have you on board. Last but by no means least, Rory. Rory, tell us your story.
Okay, thanks, Jim. I started as an artist, a musician in a band in the 90s in Ireland and the UK. And when we broke up in 99, I think I moved to New York, and I was lucky to get a job pretty soon after moving there in EMI Music Publishing. So I worked with them for 10 years in their licensing department, sync licensing, working with that catalog. And then when I left there, while still in the States, I worked for a couple of other publishers downtown for a while, and I worked with Spirit for a long time, doing their drafting their sync licenses for the licensing department for and sample licenses. So I took that. I moved back here then about 10 years ago, and we started our music supervision company here, which is called Planet of Sound Music, and we do mostly film and television here for productions here and international co-productions. We're currently working on the movie Saipan, and there's an upcoming TV show called Mixtape that we worked on for the last couple of years. And yeah, it's been, it's been good for us here in terms of the work we get, and we're always busy, thankfully. We also have a publishing company called Tremolo Music Publishing. So we, on the other side, we have a roster of Irish writers and artists that we represent for Sync and full
Right. Who
publishing.
who are some of those artists, Rory?
We've
Who
got,
who are some of those?
yeah, we've got Katie Kim. Winter has done has got some. He's done very well with his music. He doesn't like do a lot of gigs, but he
He
does
sure
well to
has.
sync.
Yeah, he should like Winter Aid. I mean, that's an amazing story. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a
amazing.
that's a huge success story for someone who's basically what like he had very much a tech day job. He was
Yeah.
writing music at night. It just took off.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got one song in particular. I think at the moment it's got like 200 million streams on Spotify. The Wisp sings. It's like he doesn't do gigs or anything. He creates his own stuff, puts it out when he's ready. As you say, he has a job as well. But yeah, he's amazing. Does it all himself. So yeah, so we work with Shane. So yeah, and a load of
Shame.
other really interesting artists that we work with.
Excellent. Well, listen, Rory, we really appreciate you joining us tonight as well. So, what we're going to do, folks, is we're going to have a chat, the four of us, for the next half an hour or so. If you have any questions during this time, just pop them into the chat field or hold on to questions, and we'll kind of like do a proper Q&A at the end. I want to start with a very kind of basic question, and I like starting with all three of you. Starting with say with Jennifer to begin with. If you're a young artist on this call and you're beginning to kind of write songs, you've written some songs, you've kind of people have told you the songs are quite good, you're kind of thinking, okay, it's time for me to get serious. You know about about having a manager, you know record labels are coming after you. When it comes to the kind of like, the songs part of it, the publishing side of it, what's the first bit of advice? What's the advice you give them? What's the aside from kind of keep writing and keep recording your songs, like what's the other advice you give them in terms of kind of like the legal side of things, the copyright side of things, getting things ready so when someone like you calls looking to hear about for a track for a scene in a film or a scene in a commercial, they'll need to have their shit together. So what's the first bit of advice you give someone?
Well, first of all, is make sure you're findable because, inside the question itself, you're like, when somebody like me calls, make sure I can call you. You'd be surprised where we might find some music online and for whatever reason, we just can't find the information on how to get a hold of somebody. So first of all, make sure that your information is out there. Secondarily, and I know this sounds like a ridiculous thing to say, but you'd be surprised, is know what you own. If you have a co-writer, if you've been working with people before you leave the writing session or before you start trying to put your music out there, make sure you know what the splits are. It's amazing how often we can't license a song because the splits haven't been worked out yet, or everyone thinks the splits have been worked out, but they don't have anything on paper. And then after the fact, we find out we can't license it because now it's in dispute. So that would be one of the first things, is make sure that you're findable and know what you own, and then get your music out there.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy to hear you say first and foremost, Jennifer, about the findability, because as a journalist, these drive me absolutely crazy. There's never a phone number, never an email address. Do you think a phone number is best? Do you think will an email suffice if someone gets back to you in 24 hours?
I think an email will suffice, because I can understand not wanting to have your phone number out on the internet where anybody and every robot can call you. But at least having an email, even if it's a specific email, like I know a friend of mine has an email called Junk Boy 257 or whatever it is, and he'd go check it every single day, but it wasn't his personal email. So if having the email out there, he was getting a lot of junk, that was fine. But just being findable, like I have literally gone on Facebook, all the socials to try and find people, and literally am messaging them through the Facebook or through Instagram or wherever I can find them to say, I'm trying to get a hold of you so that we can, possibly do some business. And if that works, that works. But if I had an email and a direct line, it would be so much easier.
Excellent. Okay, so that's fine. That's findability and making sure the paperwork is sorted out. Juliet, over to you.
I would just second exactly what you said, Jennifer. The amount of artists that they have like no actual like simple email on their website, and that would be so useful. So often I'm messaging them on Instagram saying, have you got an email that you can send me so that I can send you full details? Because you can't send them full details of a sync in an Instagram message. So that's really great. I would say make sure there's no uncleared samples in or if there is, let me know about it in your work. That's one that came to mind as you asked that question. I think that's kind of it from my point of view. But register your works, make sure the splits are there. And just know where everything is. Have instrumentals if you have them ready to go. WAV files, that kind of thing's really useful in sync.
Okay. When you say register your songs, are you talking about IMRO or are you
With
talking about
IMRO, I mean, that's usually where I'll go, or PRS, I'll go and have a look. And you can't rely on it 100%, but that's my first port of call. So have it registered. And also that's for you from a legal point of view, that you have something registered, the splits are there. And yeah, it's just a good starting point and a good practice.
Okay, great stuff. So findability, make sure everything's recorded, make sure everything is recorded in terms of splits, make sure everything is kind of registered with someone like IMRO, make sure as well the stuff is ready in terms of instrumentals, everything's ready to go, and make sure there's no uncleared samples lying like a mine in the actual song as well. Great.
Yeah.
Notice over to Rory. What would you add to that?
Well, they've covered everything, but I would say related to being findable, react, be reactive, move quickly, on, answering, and obviously it is really important to, it goes back to Jennifer's first point, is like, make sure that what you're telling me you have, you have the rights that you say you control, which would be hopefully the master and publishing for an independent artist. That's really easy, just as a supervisor. It's the most, it's very attractive, to be able to do that. It's very much more flexible, but there can't be another person's head popping up at some point in the process going, I didn't give my permission. So, that needs to be sorted out at the start. WAV files, the ability to share those really quickly, instrumentals and lyrics and stuff that would maybe be required in order, to make the final decision whether a song could be used. But yeah, I think, that kind of flexibility and be agile, is important.
Okay, so be agility and the ability to move fast. Check your head and make sure there's only one head there. Other heads won't be popping up down the line. So that's a really good summation from all of you about kind of like, I mean, the getting your shit together part of the deal. Let's go back then, kind of like, and one by one again. So Jennifer, in terms of kind of like artists, are you looking when you're listening? Am I right in thinking you're listening to it on a song by song basis? And when you're listening to it, you may not have a specific kind of scene or a specific kind of project in mind, and you could be filing that away, or are you specifically listing on a project by project basis?
Well, I think most music supervisors do both. When I'm looking for a specific scene, that's an obvious thing, but we get so many emails on a daily basis where people are just sending us their music that I literally have a secondary email that I push everything into. It's the first thing I do every morning is go through the email to see what are all the people just pitching music, and I put that into a separate email so that when I have time, I go through those one by one. And if I'm just listening to listen to see, what do I like, who's out there, who's new, and songs that I like, I definitely have a playlist where when I stumble on a song that's just fantastic and I don't have a place for it yet, it goes into that playlist of someday I'm going to be able to get to use this somewhere in a show. It could be this year, it might be 5 years from now. But I think most music supervisors have that playlist of one day I'm going to get to use this song.
Right.
On a case by case basis, it's I do a lot of shows for Sean Ryan where he is very much the song has to be particular to the scene, particular to the characters, and it has to be coming from somewhere. So it's basing the story in reality. And so for those, it's very much a scene to scene. What neighborhood am I in? Who is the person who put on the music to try and figure out what needs to go in that scene?
That's Sean Ryan of The Shield.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we just finished SWAT with him, and we're working on The Night Agent right now. And it's very scene to scene on what kind of music needs to go in there.
Okay. Is he a big music head?
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
I would say yes. He's got really good taste.
Is that a help or a hindrance when the showrunner or when the person who's hired you to find tracks actually thinks he or she knows their shit when it comes to music?
I think it's great, mainly because then you get to have a conversation and really figure out what is going to work for them, what's not going to work for them. Because we all have our own personal tastes and likes, but it may not work for that particular scene. I can't tell you how often I've had to pick music like I really don't like this genre, just not my thing. I wouldn't normally listen to it, but that's what the scene calls for, so that's what we have to look for and find. And it opens up a whole new musical world for you when you have to do that. But I personally like it when I'm working with somebody that I can have a musical conversation with. And when I don't, then yeah, it's kind of free reign, but it can sometimes be a little bit harder to nail down what they're looking for. So
Okay.
either way.
Right. Okay, cool. Juliet, moving on to you then. So, I mean, I'm assuming you have a similar process when it comes to listening to tunes. You may have a playlist like Jennifer has or whatever. I'm curious as to kind of like, I mean, do you have a kind of an actual, I suppose, written database, a typed up database that says that like what the song is like? I mean, or is it like I'm saying like maybe a fast beat, hip hop drums, heavy metal guitar? Do you kind of find it like that?
No,
Is it very much on an
yeah.
ear basis?
I don't think I'm probably should be more organized. I'm not. I have a playlist, maybe with a couple of subgenres that I just really like that aren't for any project in particular. And but I'm not like super organized where I have like a huge disco sort of playlist of one type of genre. But no, I have like maybe two or three on Spotify of just stuff that I really love that's not for anything. And then like process wise similar. I mean, I'll like at the start of the process, we'll hopefully make a playlist with the creatives, and that's a really nice time at the start of the project, where you're just a little bit freer, putting in ideas and just trying to find that tone for the show. And then as you move through the process, it's more focused on the scene. So you're really thinking about what the scene, like what's happening in the scene, what's happening in the scene in context of the show or the episode, and what does the music want to do in that scene. And so there's lots of things you're thinking of, and then it's like scene specific searches. Yeah. And then I might be kind of like going out to um sync contacts that I work with, like sync houses, where they'll have a large library of music, and I'm looking for something along these lines at this price point, and they might send me suggestions as well. So I tend to sometimes take some suggestions from them, and then just looking on Spotify or whatever, and just building my playlist that way, and then getting MP3s
Okay.
production. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
I
You
wouldn't be sending
mentioned
Spotify links, once you're getting into that stage.
Cool. You mentioned earlier on that one of the projects you were working on this year, or the last while, was a theatre project. Well, did you find working on that to be quite different in terms of a
Yeah.
process? Yeah, yeah. So maybe talk a little bit about that. Was that with one person, or was that with like, I mean, was it still the same idea about bringing in different musicians, different songs?
It was much more, I mean, it was much more straightforward, and that it was more like it was a production company that I'd worked with on a film, and they do a lot of theatre, and they wanted to clear a Beyonce song. And so it was more just a kind of clearance, and I had to understand the rights around. Quite a big production in London, and the rights are different there. It's different than sync in the UK. As to how music is licensed. So I had to do a lot of digging, and yeah, it came under the theatre license in the end, but you have to decide whether the music is within the world of the play, in which case it requires a separate license and you have to talk to the rights holders, or if it's just incidental music, it's covered under the venue license. So it wasn't a creative thing in that respect, it was just a different licensing process that I'm used to. It was
Okay,
good, it's
excellent.
fun. Yeah.
Great stuff. Moving on to you, Rory, and I want you to put on your kind of tremolo hat this time, and talk us a little bit about like the process involved with working with those acts. When do you do like, I mean, what attracts you to acts? Like, why is there certain acts you'll work with? And and maybe like talk to me about those early conversations you have with acts who approach you and who you decide, well, actually, tremolo is going to work with this person.
Yeah, so our catalog is quite small, and we do grow it, but we grow it quite slowly, and try to kind of curate a catalog. Primarily, it's whether we feel that the music will work for sync. That's like, not the only priority, but it's kind of the main thing that we think of, especially for most of the artists we work with. They're self-releasing artists. They own their own masters. They don't have profiles as such, but we believe that the music is really good. And I found that since moving here, finding a lot of Irish music was kind of underserved, like there's a kind of a, inferiority complex. Where the music is great, and so we were always looking at it from that point of view, that, from experience that we've had in sync, like, and you can never be right 100% about this stuff, but you can have a sense. But if the music kind of seems to lend itself broadly to sync, then we kind of would gravitate towards that, as well as liking the music,
Yeah.
So
Define that for me, Rory. What do you mean by lends itself to sync?
well, just, from working in sync a lot, and seeing the types of there's a lot of elements in sync that kind of come up all the time. Especially like for film and television, and maybe for ads, there are certain moods and lyrical themes and stuff that kind of just pop out, that maybe would have more of an advantage of getting used. Now, we're supervisors as well, and we can't guarantee uses for our own catalog if it doesn't work creatively. So it's kind of just a sense, really. It's not like, we don't promise anybody anything, but it's a sense that we feel that this could work, as opposed to something that's very kind of instrumental, kind of soundtrack music, which is more like that's taken care of by a composer on a TV show or a film. So we're kind of more looking in whether we feel that it would work for sync, because it's a good way to get the songs going, in terms of they wouldn't have a lot of activity, they wouldn't be having loads of radio player streams or performance royalties, but a good sync can boost that and also earn that that sync fee, some revenue for the artist as well.
Okay, that's a very good segue to bring in kind of like the question of money then, Jennifer. Like, what kind of budgets are we talking about? Like, I mean, obviously it will differ from film to film depending on who's paying the bills, how big the production is, etc. But you want to kind of like give us, without naming shows, just give us some ballpark figures.
Oh, well, here's the thing though, is it that is a really hard question to ask, because I've worked on shows, okay. In the last couple of years, I've worked on a show where I only had $6,000 per episode, and that's USD, but per episode, $6,000, which is hardly anything.
That's, yeah.
I've worked on shows where it was $2,000 per episode, which was very interesting, and you have to be incredibly creative, and I probably knew every single library track there was to find at that point. But then if you're wanting to get Led Zeppelin, or you're wanting to get somebody else, that can be six figures. And we're always talking about, if you hear a music supervisor say per side, we're talking about we have to pay for the master and we have to pay for the publishing. So per side. In the United States on a US show, it could go anywhere from $500 a side up to $25K per side. Depends on what rights you need. If you need all media, which means including theatrical, or if you're going for all media excluding theatrical, which is pretty much all TV and streaming. So it depends on the right structure that you're asking for. How big of a song is it? How big of the artist is it? And how it's being featured in the show. There's so many variables that go into a price. It's really hard to say what the prices are.
Yeah. Has a question of Juliet, like, has the fact that now there's like an abundance of different outlets, the streamers, I mean, all sorts of places like who are looking for kind of music, has this obviously kind of like the market has increased, but has the kind of like the pie, the financial pie increased as well, or is it still the same? Because I'm shocked, like those figures that Jennifer quoted, I'm just kind of what,
Yeah, I mean, I think US, I've licensed a couple of, I've worked with a music supervisor on Normal People who was based in the States. I'm obviously based here, and the difference in price was she was surprised that the prices were lower here in Ireland, so we're licensing mainly out of the UK. And overall, I would say there's probably less music budgets here, and the sync fees are lower here. But when I started doing it, the producers would regularly ask me to clear tracks for free. So they wanted me to go out to, rights holders and say, look, can we use your music for free? And I think that I don't do that now anyway, but I think that fees have gone up. Mainly in Ireland, you don't have super huge budgets, but you can go to an unsigned act and maybe say, look, we've got, I don't know, 1,000 aside, or we've got 1,500 all in, or so those kinds of figures. And I think it's not absolutely the worst fee, and it's definitely, if it's a nice usage, they're getting good exposure. So I think things have been improved in terms of the Irish understanding of what's expected music budget wise. But like, I'm working on something at the moment, the music budget's like 8 grand for all the tracks. So how we've worked it is we've said to all the people we're trying to license the music for, and this is quite good to know, is that we've said we're going to do the same price MFN across the whole series. So it's like 1,000 a track, and nobody else is going to get paid more. Everybody else is going to get paid the same, and it's the fairest way we can do it. And you might be approached if you're an artist, and it's not a disaster as a fee, and it's not like somebody else is going to be getting 4 grand and you're getting 500.
Okay. Then, like, I was following off that question then to Rory, and like, I mean, are the fees available for, say, ads, commercial ads? Are they higher than those, or are they roughly in the same ballpark?
Um, I, I have worked on ads, as from working with a rights holder for a long time. Not so much as a supervisor. I've done a couple of ads, but I would say in general, fees for the use of music in ads they're a lot higher than TV or film. Especially at like Juliet, I work primarily here from Ireland. So any kind of major catalog stuff we want to use, it's mainly we deal with, UK publishers. There's a couple of majors in Ireland, labels. Universal is here, and the Warner have a rep here, so we can deal through Ireland with them, which is great. But we do also do a lot of international co-productions, and we're working on a movie at the moment it's an Irish producer, but there's also a US producer, and they wanted license from the US. So we do that. It's fine, but we just have to go to the US rights holders, and their expectations, as from my experience from working there and now from work, I wasn't surprised, but their prices are higher than if we had to do the same thing through the same office in the same company's office in the UK, but this is the way they want to do it. But yeah, the budgets, they're more challenging here. Everything is, the film budgets are, less. So we have, you have to be more creative. We try to get involved, or we do get involved in the projects that we work on very early, and we have the discussion about the music and what's realistically you might have to pay for music, and we have that discussion, usually when we're reading the script before they shoot, and we talk about these things and point out, any kind of visual things that are in the script that you're going to need cleared before you shoot. We try to get all that stuff done. I think it's coordination and just planning strategy. You do, and creativity. With those two things, you can get a lot out of your budget. If you're kind of smart about it.
Hmm. Then it kind of leads to another question. This one, I suppose Jennifer can kind of start this one off, hopefully, and then we go back to Juliet and Rory as well. And this is like I'm kind of thinking back as all three of you are talking, like when music sync first became a thing. Like I think it was a show called the OC, and I can't remember the name of the music supervisor who was involved in that. And she sort of like there's loads of bands who kind of came through that. There's an Irish band called Bell X1, for example, who did a song on that. There was like loads of stuff like Dead Cat for Cupid, acts like that, and it became this kind of like, oh wow, music sync's a big thing. And it's clear that, like, I mean, music sync back then kind of obviously meant a fee, but also meant kind of profile wise as well. Do you think kind of like, I mean, is profile still a big thing when it comes to sync? And also, like, what are the other advantages to an act when they get a track placed on a show?
Um, I would say yes, it still is. I mean, we all know bands like the OC, bands that have broken on shows like the OC, Grey's Anatomy, definitely first, second, and third season is sort of the same thing. I don't know from a US standpoint if it still plays as much into the fee in helping us get better fees or not at this point. But I do think as far as getting discovered, or getting a song out there that might not be found on Spotify unless somebody was specifically going to look for it, that yes, it's still very much because we're playing to such a huge field, and you never know who's watching your show and who's gonna clue into something and then immediately have to go figure out what that song is on Spotify, and then it just blows up. So I would say yeah, definitely
Okay.
still much, very much the case.
Same question, Juliet.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I definitely think so. I think, like I'm thinking of normal people, and I mean, it depends how successful the show is, and also like if you have it's a very background use, maybe it's not so kind of, you're not going to get as much exposure. But if you've got a nice use, people are going to Shazam that. Often there's a playlist associated with the show, and people are going to access this playlist. So, but like with normal people, like there's Anna Mieka was an artist who she closed out episode one, and that track just like I mean, you just don't know with these shows, well, in Ireland as well, they just don't get seen quite as much. But that just went from like I think there was like 2,000 streams to 25 million streams, like 7 or 8 months later. It was just like, and then she signed a record deal and everything. So it definitely can, definitely can, really add to your profile and your career.
Yeah. Have you seen similar things happening for some of the things you've been involved with, Rory?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think there was we did we've done the Young Offenders, and in the first season of the Young Offenders, the very last song in the last episode was a big visual set piece with a Frank and Walters song from 25 years before that. After all, and it was a hit. They were on top of the pops, and in the UK with the song. They were like definitely topped. I don't think it was number one, but it was like, it was up there in the charts like 25 years before. We used that song in the show and, rearranged it for the cast, and they all sang it. It's a great scene. It was a fun scene in the kind of a big ending scene. And the song really, they are well known. They were more well known, and that some of that recognizability came back. People kind of, reconnected with that song after all. And I think it went to the top of the Irish charts at that time after that. So, they were really happy about it. It certainly can, the right sync, if it's the right moment in the show, if it's kind of got that kind of emotional kind of resonance about it, whether it's funny or sad or whatever, people do latch onto that. It shows how important the music is as part of that audio visual experience. The music can really heighten something really in a nice way. So I think it is important. The use of music is important. And I think more and more, as we work on these types of shows, and all of us work on these shows, we kind of highlight that, producers and directors kind of realize that more and more, that it is important,
Mm-hmm. The last set of questions before I get some questions from the audience. I know there's some questions coming in on the chat, so I'll get to them as well. This question, like, let's start this one with Jennifer. And it's like, I was just kind of thinking. You said earlier on about kind of the budget you might have for a show. It's kind of like a small amount really in terms of kind of like an episode or whatever. But I'm kind of curious, how do you work it with kind of like a producer or a director then who may be looking for familiarity versus kind of like something that's new and might work in as well?
And I have a very small budget.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
What's that conversation like?
First of all, it's just having a conversation of, okay, well, this is how much money we have. And I'll use my $6,000 per episode. And I apologize, I can't tell how that budget resonates with the other two music supervisors, but from the US standpoint, that's very low.
Yeah.
And it's hard for us because when we're dealing with the major labels and publishers, the fees that we have to pay are way higher, much, much higher. And so $6,000 is really hardly anything for an episode. And we would always talk about that we have to rob Peter to pay Paul. So if I have, usually these days, it's only 10 episodes for a series, for a season, I mean, then I may use up, if we need a big song to come out of the gate for the pilot or the very first episode, I'm probably going to use half the season's budget to pay for that one song and then make up for it in the rest of the episodes. Because usually I'm allowed to, if I only have $6,000, but I have 10 episodes, then I have that much money to work with. And I may spend almost all of it in one episode because we have to come out of the gate strong. Mm-hmm. So we have to just manage expectations. Covers get used a lot when we have a very small budget and they want a song that's recognizable, but we can't afford both sides of something. So we'll use a cover. And sometimes it's just about finding a song that fits the same bill. I'm not going to say sound alike or anything like that because you run into copyright infringement there, but you can often find songs that are just give you the exact same thing as that familiar song that they wanted. And it just has to have that right sound for them to click onto it and then realize that they can afford it and go from there.
Yeah. All right. That's interesting what you said about cover versions as well, Jennifer. I used to always wonder why there were so many cover versions on TV shows, and now I know the answer.
Afford it.
Yeah.
Question now for Juliet, and like actually this question to go around the table as well. What are the qualities you think a good music supervisor should have?
I mean, yeah, you should have good attention to detail, because you don't, you really, like, it's very much kind of legal in a lot of respects. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, we're not lawyers typically, but like, you can have the most creative, amazing, use for song, but if you haven't cleared the rights properly, well, like you're in trouble. So, I always say, yeah, everyone just thinks it's like, just collating all your favorite music and sending it to
Yeah.
creative people, but it's about 70% spreadsheets. So I think, you need to understand, first and foremost, you need to understand music rights and you really need to know what you're doing. Yeah. And then I think like a love of music, a love of film and TV, because it's really like a service to them, what you're doing. You're serving whoever the head person is, you're serving their vision. And be organized and make loads of relationships, I think, because like you end up just going in so many different directions to sort of find what you want and, make loads of connections with labels. And yeah, I think that you guys, Rory and Jennifer, you might say something else.
Where's the oldest place you've ended up going, Juliet, to find the right track?
Oh well, to find the right track. I mean, I've gone to mad places for clearance. Like I had to clear a track. It was a co-write between a nun and another writer, and I had to go to a closed order in the north of England to clear a track. Um, I mean,
That's it. You win. You
You
win.
win. No, yeah, totally. You win. You win the whole week. You win it.
Yeah,
I know.
wrap it
I had
up.
to go to a
And how
priest,
did?
and he didn't want to take. She was dead, and he didn't want to take any payment because he said she considered her like skill a gift from God. And I was like, oh, I don't know where to begin. I had to write to them, but it was a film and I had time. But that's always my kind of clearance story. To find songs, oh, I don't know, everywhere and anywhere, I actually use Spotify a lot, just researching down rabbit holes and trying to find stuff that people haven't used as well. That's also sometimes they really like directors or showrunners don't want a track that's been used. Yeah, maybe somebody else has a better story than that. I don't know.
I'm just
Um,
going to pass over to Rory. What are your spreadsheets like? Spreadsheet skills like? But more importantly,
really,
are you
they're
good at
really
getting
good.
done
Really,
it?
I'm pretty good on Excel. Yeah, I must say. Um, it is a lot of, and it's like not the glamorous. So it's not really the glamorous part. It's actually a part that elements of it I really enjoy. The kind of nuts and bolts and my background is in working with EMI and working as a licensed drafter both there and with Spirit. Just kind of have a good sense of the terminology and the licenses. So it does help. It does help us when just right, even requesting music and requesting the correct rights, etc. It is I get sent a lot of music and if I'm not in various different projects, you've got different hats on all the time. You're at various different stages require totally different skills. So if you're in post on something, you're doing a lot of clearance and you're actively looking for specific things. And the music that gets sent outside of that, just kind of ad hoc, is not really helpful at all. I mean, it's not something we can even interact with. You really are. The only time I'm really, really listening to stuff for sync is when I have a real scene that I need to fill, and you're kind of really concentrating on that. But it's always the intention to kind of log everything away as well that gets sent, so we can always kind of pull something up. But generally, it's more chaotic than that.
Yeah, yeah. That the idea of logging everything you're being sent, like I talked I said about earlier on about heavy metal drum, hip hop feel, etc. It's great in theory, but in practice, I can't imagine you having time to do it.
Well, in fairness, the people who send us music can take a lot of that heavy lifting by having their
Yeah,
metadata really, like a lot of people use the same platforms like Disco and stuff, and you can load all your metadata into your songs, into your files, so
yeah,
then they can be searched. So, I mean, I would ask, that's one thing I would say to any artist sending their music to people like us, whether publishers or supervisors, have all that information in the background filled in, all the writing information, the contact information, as Jennifer mentioned at the very beginning, is obviously that's the first point. So that's important. But yeah, have all that, make it easy for us to find what we're looking for, in terms of like keywords and moods and all that stuff. And that can be done. You can do that yourself as an artist before you send the thing in your metadata.
Okay, great. Okay, so basically, so that's a really good roundup of stuff. I heard there's some great stories there. I heard some things I didn't expect to hear about nuns. So I'm very happy with the last 45 minutes. So I'm going to get some questions in from the audience. So let's see what we have here. We've a couple of questions here. So question for all three panelists from John Dog. Did you ever have to fight hard for a piece of music to be included, and did you win, get in the project? And what was it, if you can say? Does anyone take that? Get it to a certain piece of music you want to get into a film or TV project, and you have to fight hard to get it. Anyone want to take that question?
I'll take it. We worked on a show over the last couple of years that's going to air later this year, and it's very much about it's called Mixtape, and it's about music. It's about two people who kind of fall in love over their love of kind of independent music in the late 80s in Sheffield, and they're into all the music. I am the character in the show, the same musical taste, etc. So it was just for me. This was one that I kind of knew the songs without having to do any research. I said this is what they would be into, and it hasn't aired yet, but we pitched them a Jesus and Mary Chain song for the end credits of the first episode, and it kind of when I kind of fought hard for it because they didn't all, it was kind of a co-production, and not everybody in the process was kind of was on board with it. Like they were, I'm not sure I get this. A lot of others were like, oh, I remember this is great. So we got it through that whole process. It got in there when we saw the cut and we first saw the episode. It does really work, and that was kind of gratifying. I think everybody was reacting to it, and that was, a nice moment that, I was glad that we didn't because you can always just say, all right, well, we'll go with what you want, but we kind of fought for it a little bit. And I think, I'm glad because you don't always win those fights.
Yeah. Great stuff. Jennifer, is there any memorable battles you want to talk about?
Well, the one that I have, I can't say that it was really a battle. It was just, I took a chance. I was asked very specifically to get a bunch of versions of the song Time After Time, but they were looking for a very specific sound and they wanted to go a little bit slower. And I sent them a bunch of stuff. It's like, well, here's a bunch that go exactly with what you've asked for, but I also sent one, and I called it out in my email back to them in the discussion I had back. I was like, I hope you don't mind, but I also went outside the box with one version that I particularly like. And it was huge. It was trailerized. It was an epic song, or an epic version of the song, which was kind of the polar opposite of what they'd asked for. I'm like, just please play it again, scene. Just try it. And then after that, that was it. They couldn't see another song, another version of it being used. And so it was going against what I was asked for was the battle. It was like, I don't know if this is a good idea, but I'm going to do it anyway because I just see it working.
Wild card.
That's pretty.
Yeah.
What made you realize then, Jennifer, that like this is actually going to be? Was it a gut feeling? Was it something else?
It was just I normally ask if they can send me the scene. Sometimes depending on where they are in the cut, I'm pitching blind. I can't actually get the scene yet to watch it and play it. But in this particular case, I had been given a rough edit of what they were going to do. And it was one of the first times we were ever doing something of a montage in the scene. And so I just felt like this would make it seem so much bigger and would actually work without being over the top. And I was able to play it against picture and being able to tell them to do the same thing of literally giving them the start and end times of the end of the time code and how they needed to slide the song in and possibly do a little bit of editing. It just made it work. Wow. So it was being able to put it up against picture and saying, like, just go with me on this one. I know it's a trailerized version, which we normally would not do in this type of show, especially with the kind of sound we had for the show, but it's going to work, and it worked out well. So
super stuff. Any
I felt like I won.
Any memorable battles you've had, Juliet?
Oh, I don't think so.
Can
I'm
you,
trying to rack my brains, trying to think of something, and I'm sure there is, but I just can't bring it to mind. I mean, I've had memorable kind of declines where you have like you just know it's amazing, and then for whatever reason the artist declines the use, and that's painful. There's a few
Yeah.
very painful ones along the way, but that's inevitable.
yeah, you win
Artists
some, you lose some.
decline. What?
You win some, you lose some.
You win some, you lose some. Exactly. Yeah.
There's a very specific question here from Adele, and I'll read out the question, and then one of you will just probably take the question and go either yeah you've got the answer straight away or something a bit more technical. And Adele manages a self-released, self-published Irish artist who has some co-writes, and the split agreements are done. All the music is registered. What wording can I add to the split agreements that gives the artist authority for one-stop sync approval on the co-writer's behalf? Assuming they are without publishers as well. Is there a specific wording that can be used? And if so, what happens if these co-writers enter into a publishing agreement after they've given the artist permission, this artist permission to one stop the song?
Um, I can try to take that. So the writer, their collaborators, they wrote the song together, and they wrote down the splits, right? So it's kind of in writing and agreed with everybody. So is one of the writers the artist? One
Yes,
writer being the art?
that
Okay.
seems to be what
So
it's
if
saying.
that, so it's just it's almost like a simple agreement. I mean, it could be part of the written splits. It could be just that, the other writers, the artist writer would probably be the primary writer, I guess. So there could be some simple arrangement made on paper that everybody could sign that they're happy for the artist to take the lead on approving syncs of the song. They will get their splits according to the splits of the song. They will get their royalties and their split of the sync fees, etc. But I think that should be fairly straightforward. Nothing more complicated than the written how the splits are written down. That could be just and added to that as we other writers give the main artist writer approval, broad approval, I guess, to move ahead with the song.
Okay, cool. That's great. There's another one here, a question from JM Tierney, and it's about Winter Age, Rory. And so you said that Winter Age doesn't perform live. Shane doesn't perform live. How does a connection like that happen in your line of work? Or is it organically, or is it a bit of a rare one? Because it goes against the advice that he keeps hearing of gig, 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 gig to be seen and to be noticed.
Mm. That one for us, it was Shane's records were released on a label based in Sligo called Blue Stack Records, run by a friend of ours called Mark Willis, and he's been putting out records for, I guess, 15 years or so at this point. But and Shane was one of his artists, and we when we first moved here, we connect. We're in Leitrim, we're in the northwest, so nearby, and we got to know those guys from that label. They were putting out some really interesting stuff, including Winter Aid. So we became aware of Shane then. After a couple of years, I think Shane wanted to try to find more opportunities for his music, have somebody working with his music in terms, because he couldn't do it all himself. Because he does all the music himself, but he's more like a creative, and he'd prefer to just kind of write and create as opposed to worry about admin and stuff. So um, we managed to that's the reason that we started to work together. It is an unusual case that somebody who doesn't I think he does plan to do some shows, but he hasn't really. I don't know if he's done any or many at all over the years, but it's just he was lucky in terms of his early release of this song came out quite a long time ago, and it got on early Spotify playlists and kind of worked its way through, made up a lot of numbers organically, really, without him pushing it too much as an artist. So I think he realizes how lucky he is in that respect. But it is an unusual case. Most artists wouldn't be that lucky.
Okay. Question here from Francis. And Francis, I just need to kind of just clarify something here as well. When you say sell your song, are you talking about selling your song for sync, for publishing, or what? Do you want to unmute yourself there for a second? Francis, do you want to unmute yourself? Okay, I'll call out the question anyway, and we take from there, Sir Francis. Thank you very much. So, Francis' question is: if I sell my song for low money in Ireland, would a US studio want it in the future, despite it being used previously in Ireland?
Either or, Jim.
Yeah, either or. Sorry, thanks, Francis. Thank you. So basically, if he sold a song for low money on the sync in Ireland or publishing in Ireland, would a US entity want it in the future, despite it being used previously in Ireland? It's supposed to depend on the song, would it?
It would be a non-exclusive. It wouldn't have
Yeah.
any bearing on other uses of the song. So that would be a one-off, and it would just be for the project that you like. And you're not really selling it. You're just licensing it. It's still yours. You license it. You get a fee for that. In general, we talked about those fees. You want to get us, you'll get the fee. But that song is only they can only use it in that one production that they've licensed it for. You're free to, and it's non-exclusive. You're free
We're
to,
basically renting.
yeah,
We're
exactly.
just renting the rights for the song. That's it. We don't take any ownership at all.
And you're free to license it again to another entity.
Yeah.
Would it be seen as naff though by a bigger entity, a bigger studio, bigger country to say, oh, this has been out before in a smaller network, smaller country, or would
No,
that be?
So,
not at all.
Not at all.
No,
The only-
you even see it with records as well, Francis. Like Rory mentioned earlier on, Blue Stack Records, and Blue Stack have an artist called Maureen Bradley. They found Maureen Bradley in the first place, and she, like me, they released her first record, and then she was snapped up by Decca, or it's Decca, wasn't it? It was Decca. So it's like, no, it's if someone wants it, they'll go get it anyway, you know. Last question, and last question, because I can see Moya is in the room and for the next panel as well. So the last question is a good question from Aaron, and it's: what's the best process for an independent artist to get their music in front of music supervisors? Are cold emails suitable? Is there any way of contact that is frowned upon? Each one of you in turn, starting with Jennifer. What's the best way to get hold of Jennifer Reeve?
Yes, cold emails. Don't ask, just send, and have as much information. Like metadata is key. We talked about that earlier. It's very much key because if I hold on to something in Disco, I may not be able to find your email 5 years from now, but if your information is in the metadata of the song, I know who to contact.
Smash
Yeah.
it. Juliet, same
I
question to
would
you.
say not to call because you're on the go, and sometimes the odd time I get a call, but I could be out and about, or yeah, email is good. And I think if you find like this, there are sync houses that represent artists both sides for sync non-exclusively, and I do use them a lot, so it's quite a good way for somebody who's working your catalog to represent you, and they're well connected themselves. So there are a number of them in Ireland and in the
Give me an
UK.
example of give us an example of one in Ireland, just a name.
There's like Paragon. I think Paragon are a label, but they also like offer sync one stop, or so somebody like that. You could look
John McCallion.
John McCallion as well. Yeah. Because sometimes you're busy and you want to go to somebody for suggestions, maybe that has a broader range of tracks that they can send to you, and so it's they're making connections all the time, and people are going to them, so sometimes it can help with the process.
Yeah, it can definitely help. I think sometimes a supervisor might be more comfortable dealing with a sync agent like that they know that sync agent has done the due diligence with the artist. So so the artist may not just know fully or understand their rights, but that can be sorted in that relationship, and then it's a bit of an easier process then to use the music. But not to say that you can't have all your ducks in a row yourself. I would say email. Absolutely, just email. I mean, we don't all we try to check out everything we get sent. For the supervision stuff, we don't always answer people, but we take it on board and try to send links where we can download from, as opposed to attaching files to emails.
That's a good
And there's plenty of good platforms to do that. Just send a link and we can download, or just even a streaming link just to hear the music first. Even your Spotify page or whatever. That's better than large files.
Cool. Excellent stuff. Well, listen, that was a fascinating hour. Like, that was some great stories in there. Some stories I didn't expect to hear about nuns in North of England. Fantastic
Yes.
stories all around. This is great. So big thanks to Juliet, to Rory, and Jennifer. Really appreciate that. So thank you very much. That's the first hour of tonight's show finished.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks. Bye,
Thanks,
Jim.
everybody.
Thanks, Fabian. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.